There's a view that's very common today. In fact, if you go on the internet and you see this thing called Zeitgeist The Movie, have you heard about that? Millions of young people, 20s, 30-somethings, have watched it. The argument of Zeitgeist the Movie, it's a very old one, but it's popular again now, is Christianity is just one more iteration of this old myth of the dying and rising God, right? Horus and Osiris and Dionysus and Krishna, and all over the world you find these myths of gods who come to the earth, who suffer, die, rise again. And so the debunkers say Christianity is just one more version of this. Do you remember C.S. Lewis's great line? Lewis said, whenever you're tempted to, or anyone who says that Christianity is just one more version of that old myth has not read many myths. See, here's why. The myths, and I love the myths, but they trade in these grand generalities which are meant to evoke the natural rhythms and necessities within the world. Myths are talking about the dying and rising of the crops. They're talking about the rising and falling of the seas and rivers. They're talking about the great natural necessities. And so they speak in a kind of vague, generic way. Mircea Eliade, the wonderful theoretician of myths, said that mythic language is always in illo tempore, in that time, way back then, once upon a time. Or, want to update it, in a galaxy far, far away. Well, see, Star Wars is mythic language, and it participates in that mythic form. And then there's this. Paul's first great message was resurrection. The resurrection of Jesus from the dead was the essential, central teaching of Paul. Remember this now, from the 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians. Now, I'm reminding you, brothers, of the gospel I preached to you, the euangelion I preached to you, for I handed on to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day. Now, again, I'll come back to this at the very end, but whenever you're tempted to say, the heart of the good news is the moral teaching of Jesus. The heart of the good news is this new ethical vision. That's wonderful, and that's a terrific part of the gospel, but that's not the euangelion. This is. I handed on to you what is of first importance, that Jesus is risen from the dead. There's an awful lot of religion today that wants to bracket that kind of embarrassing language and to move into the more accessible ethical language of Jesus. It's a very dangerous path to follow. Philosophically, it was Immanuel Kant back in the 18th century who took us down that path. Followed. It wasn't Paul's path. Lest we miss the specificity and density of this, Paul reminds us of the very definite people to whom Jesus appeared. Listen, he appeared to Cephas, it's Peter, then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 brothers at once, most of whom are still living. In other words, you can talk to them. Then to James and to all the apostles. And finally, as to one untimely born, he appeared to me. Now, here's what I want you to see. This is not the way myth writers talk. This is not the generic language about illo tempore. This is about a historically dense, real encounter with an objective person. That's what the resurrection faith is about. That's the euangelion, the good news that Paul wants to share with the world.